My apologies for the late start. We unfortunately had a massive distributed denial of service attack against our servers.
We view that as an honor. And then you do want silencing of certain voices. Usually those are voices that have something to say that are constructive, oftentimes constructive. And
Yeah,
so we have to consider it an honor. But congratulations on breaking every record in the book tonight. That's great.
your actions after that assassination attempt were inspiring. Um, you instead of shying away from things, instead of ducking down, you were pumping your fist in the air and saying, "Fight, fight, fight!" And I think that's, I mean, the president of the United States represents America, and I think that is America. That is strength under fire, and so that's a big a part of the reason why I was excited to endorse you as the president of the United States.
I knew immediately that it was a bullet. I knew immediately that it was at the ear.
Yeah,
And because it hit very hard, but hit the ear, far less destructive than any other angle. So that was the miracle. That was
yeah,
for those
split
people that
second.
don't believe in God. I think we got to all start thinking about that. You have to, I'm a believer now. I'm more of a believer. A bad shot would hit that target almost every time. They said it's like in golf,
Yeah,
sinking a 2-foot putt.
yeah. It's not a tough
No,
shot.
it's not a long shot. The Secret Service person had the long shot. He had triple the
Yeah,
distance actually. He sort of missed. I mean, he uh,
yeah. But
he
as you
got
said,
me,
he
but it
would have
could have
hit.
been a much
Yeah.
bigger problem.
I think most people who are illegal immigrants are actually good, but you can't tell the difference unless there's a solid vetting of who comes across the border. Does that accurately
100%.
represent your position?
I say it
Okay.
very simply. They have to come in legally. They have to be checked
Yeah.
because look, Kamala was the border czar. Now she's denying it. Everything that I do, she's
Yeah.
saying she was strong on the border. We're going to be strong. Well, she doesn't have to say it. She could close it up right now. They could do things right now. It's horrible. Uh, no tax on tips, and all of a sudden she's making a speech and there will be no tax on tips. I said that months ago. And by the way, they had just the opposite. They had not only tax on tips, but they hired 88,000 IRS agents, and many of them were assigned to go get waitresses and caddies and all of this on tips. They have a policy. They had a policy that they were really going to go after you. I believe, and I think you believe this too. You hear 12
Yeah.
million, 13. I believe it's over 20 million people came into our country,
Yeah.
many coming from jails, from prisons, from mental institutions, or a bigger version of that is
Yeah.
insane asylums, and many are terrorists. And I'll tell you what, they're coming not just from South America, they're coming from Africa, they're coming from all over the world, they're coming from Asia, they're
Yeah.
coming from the Middle East, they're coming from countries that are uh, stupidly and horribly bombing Israel October 7th. They're coming from all over the world. And you look at it's so sad October 7th because it should have never happened.
Yeah.
It's so sad when
Sure.
you look at Ukraine. It should have never happened. We have a defective
Yeah.
government. These are defective people. As an example, Venezuela, their crime is down 72%. They're taking their drug dealers. They're taking, frankly, their prisoners. They're emptying out their prisons. They're taking their criminals, their murderers, their rapists, and they're
Yeah.
delivering them into
But
the.
that's what Castro did
Yeah,
that.
well, he did on a much smaller scale.
Yeah.
It was a much smaller
Yeah.
scale. But this is a massive scale because this is being done worldwide. But here's what's happening: crime all over the world is down. And wait till you see the numbers that we have. This is migrant crime. This is crime that's going to be.
Yeah.
And I saw it today in New York where somebody was knifed with raped the girlfriend of a man that stood there watching in New York in one of the shelters and started
Sure.
pulling out the knives, and bad things happen today. But this is happening every day. These are rough people. And they're doing it right now while this third-rate phony candidate. Don't forget, I beat Biden. He failed in the debate miserably. And, some people said, oh, gee, it's too bad. It's too bad he did so badly, or I did well in the debate. The first night they said, wow, One of the people at CNN said that was the greatest debate performance I've ever witnessed. And then 2 days later, they didn't talk about that. They just said he was bad. But that's okay. That's the way I get treated, and I don't mind that at all. What I can tell you is this: we cannot have a Democrat. We cannot have her. She's incompetent. She's as bad as Biden in a
It's
different. Look,
yeah.
she hasn't done an
I mean,
interview since this
yeah.
whole scam started.
Well,
And say what you want. This
yeah.
was a coup. This was a coup of a president of the United States. He didn't want to leave, and they said we can do it the nice
Yeah.
way or we can do it the
No.
hard way.
Yeah. Not, I mean, they just took him out back behind the shed and basically shot him.
Oh, what they did
Biden.
with this guy,
So
and I'm no
yeah.
fan of his, and he was a horrible president, the worst president in history. So I had a good relationship with Putin, despite the Russia hoax. I know Putin very well. I got along with him very well. He respected me, and it's just one of those things. And we would talk a lot about Ukraine. It was the apple of his eye. But I said, don't ever do it. Don't ever do it. You know, I shut down Nord Stream too. That was the big oil pipeline, the biggest, I think, the biggest pipeline in the world going all over Europe. I shut it down. Biden came, and then they say,
Yeah.
I loved Russia. I was a friend of Putin, and I loved Russia. No, he actually said to me one time, he said, if you're my friend, I'd hate to see you as an enemy. I shut down his pipeline.
That the immense importance of whether the United States president is intimidating or not intimidating, and how much that matters to global security, because there's some real tough characters out there, and if they don't think the American president is tough, they will do what they want to
I
do,
know every one of
and
them.
it puts the whole
Yeah.
world in danger.
Elon, I know every one
It's
of
a
them,
big
and I know
deal.
them well. I know
Yeah,
Putin. I know President Xi. I know Kim Jong Un of North Korea. I know every one of them. And let me tell you, people will say, "Oh, this is terrible." He said, "I'm not saying anything good or bad. They're at the top of their game. They're tough. They're smart. They're vicious."
Uh-oh.
And they're going to protect their country, whether they love their country. They probably do. It's just a different form of love, but they're going to protect their country. But these are
yeah,
tough people at the top of their game. And when they see a Kamala or when they see Biden, Sleepy Joe, they can't even
yeah.
believe it. They can't believe this happened. All the stuff that you're seeing now, all the horror that you look at Israel, they're all waiting for an attack from Iran. Iran would not be attacking, believe me, because I think we would have been good with Iran. I don't want to do anything bad to Iran, but they knew not to mess around. Iran was broke because I told China, if you buy from Iran oil, it's all about the oil. That's where the money is. But if you buy oil from Iran, you're not going to do any business with the United States. 4 years ago, we were so respected to a point where when I said don't buy oil, they didn't buy oil, but they had no money,
Yeah,
which is the biggest threat.
yeah.
You know, the biggest threat is not global warming, where the ocean's going to rise one eighth of an inch over the next 400 years. And you'll have more oceanfront property, right? The biggest threat is not that. The biggest threat is nuclear warming.
It's something that people have, I think, after the end of the Cold War, people have become complacent about, but they actually have forgotten that there are currently a lot of nuclear missiles that have targeting parameters for the United States from other
100%.
countries,
And one of the things
and
we're going to do is
it's
we're going to
yeah,
build an iron dome over us. Israel has it. We're going to have the best iron dome in the world. We need it, and we're going to make it all in the United States. But we're going to have protection because it just takes one maniac to start something. We're going to have protection, and we're going to have. Why shouldn't we have an iron dome? Israel has one. Some other places
yeah,
have one that nobody even knows about, frankly. But Israel has it. We're going to have an iron dome. But with all of that being said, to me, that's so important. The most important. You have a good, and you do make a great product. I have to say. I have to be honest with you.
thank
That
you.
doesn't mean everybody should have an electric car, but these are minor details. But your product is incredible.
So I think it would be great to just have a government efficiency commission that takes a look at these things and just ensures that the taxpayer money, the taxpayers' hard-earned money, is spent in a good way. I'd be happy to help out on such a commission
I'd love
if
it.
it were formed.
Well, you're the greatest cutter. I mean, I look at what you do. You walk in and you just say, "You want to quit?" They go on
Yeah,
strike. I won't mention the name of the company, but they go on strike, and you say, "That's okay. You're all gone. You're all gone." So every one of you is gone, and you are the greatest. You would be very good. I want to close up Department of Education, move education back to the states where
yeah,
where states like Iowa, where states like Idaho, not every state will do great because states that basically aren't doing good now. You look at Gavin Newsom, the governor of California. He he's terrible. He does a terrible job. So he's not going to do great with education.
It really just comes, like I said, I think it just comes down to really, I guess, two things, which is that if you solve government overspending, you solve inflation, which improves living
Right.
standards of the average person, and then if you deregulate, like have sensible regulations, so because a lot of the regulations are nonsensical and cause the cost to be extreme for no reason. But unless you've got effective deregulation, like Reagan did a great job on deregulation in the 80s, but it's been 40 years since we had at
That's right.
anyone really. I mean, during your administration, we made some progress, but I think there's an opportunity to make, I think, radical progress with sensible regulation.
So many of your friends said to me, the best years we've ever had in business were during the Trump years.
That I don't think we should vilify the oil and gas industry and the people that have worked very hard in those industries to provide the necessary energy to support the economy. And if we were to stop using oil and gas right now, we would all be starving and the economy would collapse. So it's, I don't think it's right to sort of vilify the oil and gas industry. And I, the world has a certain demand for oil and gas, and it's probably better if the United States provides that than some other
Sure.
countries. But like you can leave the farmers alone,
I agree.
in
How
my opinion.
crazy is that where
I mean,
you have farmers that are not allowed to farm anymore and have to get rid of their cattle and the whole world is
yeah,
a
that's
little
silly.
crazy, but it's largely taken its lead from us. I do say though, I've heard in terms of the fossil fuel, because even to create your electric car and create the electricity needed for the electric car. Fossil fuel is what really creates that at the generating plants. And, so you sort of can't get away from it at this moment. I mean, someday you might be able to, but I do hear we have anywhere from 100 to 500 years left. The one thing that I don't understand is that people talk about global warming or they talk about climate change, but they never talk about nuclear warming. And to me,
Sure.
that's an immediate problem because you have, as I said, 5 countries. We have major nuclear, and probably some others are getting there, and that's very dangerous. That's where you need a strong American president because you don't want to have this proliferation. But you have 5 countries and getting more. China is much less than us right now, but they're going to catch us sooner than people think. They're way lower. Russia and us are number one, and I mean, we're sort of tied. And China is far behind, but they're developing at a level that you're not surprised to hear very fast.
The electricity generation is
Absolutely, you're
underrated,
right.
and it's actually, people have this fear of nuclear electricity generation, but it's actually one of the safest forms of electricity generation. It's just a huge misunderstanding. And if you look at the injuries and deaths, caused by, say, I mean, I'm not trying to pick on coal mining, but just any kind of mining
Right.
operation, and there's a certain number of injuries and deaths per year, and you compare that to nuclear. Nuclear is actually way better. So it's underrated as an electricity source, and I think it's something that's worth reconsidering. But there's so much regulation that people can't get it done.
No, it has a branding problem. When you see what happened
It does have a branding problem.
when you see what happened in Japan, where they say you won't be able to go on the land for about 3,000 years. Did you ever see that? And in Russia, where they had the problem, where there's a lot of bad things happened, and they have a problem. And they say that in 2,000 years, people will start to occupy the land again. You realize it's pretty bad,
No,
but
that's not true.
but you're
Well, no,
right
no,
about it. It's amazing.
it's actually not that bad. So like after Fukushima happened in Japan, like people were asking me in California, are we worried about like a nuclear cloud coming from Japan? I'm like, no, that's crazy. It's not even dangerous in Fukushima. I actually flew there and ate locally grown vegetables on TV to prove it. Um, and I donated a solar water treatment, yeah, a solar powered system for a water treatment plant. And
Yeah, but you haven't
because the
been
danger
feeling
is
so
just
well lately, and I'm worried about it. You fight for election integrity, and you end up getting indicted because you're fighting for election integrity. And when the day comes that you can't fight for election integrity, you don't have a country anymore. So what happens? What
yeah.
happens is they went after their political opponent, me. Now Biden's, close to vegetable stage, in my opinion. Okay, I looked at him today on the beach, and I said, why would anybody allow him The guy could barely walk. Why would anybody allow him? Does
Yeah.
he have a political advisor that thinks this looks good?
I mean, he's clearly like, we just don't have a president right
You
now.
don't
That's
have a
just obviously the
president, and
case.
she's going to be worse than him
Um,
because she is a San Francisco liberal who destroyed San Francisco, and then as Attorney General, she destroyed California. You talk about location, and we're talking about the sun and the water and all. There's nothing better than California. She has destroyed that. She was the original DA. She was the original in San Francisco. She was the original Attorney General in California. What she has done to California is, well, you know better than I do. You just left California for a lot of those reasons. And what she's done with crime, with cashless bail, where you kill somebody. I mean, we have states now you kill somebody and they let you out right away. I mean, you don't have to even put up, and then they never find the people unless they kill again, and then they let them out again.
no, I mean, obviously, what's happening sort of overnight is they're rewriting history and making Kamala sound like a moderate when in fact she is far left, like far
Worse
left.
than Bernie
Um,
Sanders. She is considered more
yeah,
liberal by far than Bernie Sanders. She's a radical left lunatic. And if she's going to be our president, very quickly, you're not going to have a country anymore. And she'll go back to all of
yeah,
the things that she believes in. She believes in defunding the police. She believes in no fracking, zero. You no. Now all of a
yeah,
sudden she's
yeah.
saying, no, I will. I really want to see fracking. If they got in, the day she got in, she'll end fracking. And by the way, if people didn't think that, the lunatics that really believe in that, she is so anti-Israel, and she's bad for both. Biden actually did something that was impossible. Both sides hate him. Both sides. That was a hard
Yeah.
thing to do. Unification.
Yeah, no. I mean, Netanyahu came to give a talk to a joint Senate and House sitting, and I was there, and Kamala stood him up. What does that say?
I think
Um,
it's highly
that's
disrespectful. And I say, if you're a Jewish person or if you believe in Israel, if you're a person that, is a very pro-Israel, if you vote for her, it's worse than Biden. And Biden was bad. But if you vote for her, you ought to have your head examined. Their Iron Dome, as they call it, as we all call it, but their shield that they built, that can be swamped. We'll use the term that's
yeah,
appropriate, swamped. But they
yeah.
swamp it by shooting enough missiles. You know this better than anybody. By shooting enough missiles,
So,
they can't defend themselves. They just obliterate the whole
yeah,
place. And that's what some people think they're looking to do. And we have no leadership. There's no respect for the United States of America with these people. And I'm telling you,
yeah,
she'll be worse than him because she's a believer
yeah. No,
in
I
being
think you're right.
radical left, and he wasn't. Well,
Um, so
her
I think
running
that,
mate approved, signed into legislation, tampons in boys' bathrooms. Okay, now
yeah,
that's
yeah,
all I
that's
have
weird.
to hear. Tampons in
That's
boys'
weird.
bathrooms, and that means she believes
Yeah,
in that too. I mean,
yeah. That's
she
not
picked this
okay.
guy because he was the closest to her. A lot of people thought she'd pick sort of the opposite, but she picked an anti-Israel radical left person. But she is far worse, they say, than Bernie Sanders. When you talk about
So
cost cutting and savings and everything else, I mean, honestly, look, there's nobody that feels worse about the Ukraine situation than I do because I know it would have never happened. I know Zelensky. He was very honorable to me because when they went with the Russia hoax and they said I had a phone call with him, he said it was a perfect phone call. It was a great phone call. He could have grandstanded and, said, oh, he was very threatening. He said, no, it was a very nice phone call. I called him up to congratulate him on his win, and you end up getting impeached because these people are
yeah.
lunatics,
This is a
unfairly
this is
by
a
the
really
press.
big point. You can actually have a conversation with you,
Yeah, it's nice, isn't
and you can't have a conversation with Biden or Kamala. It's
it?
like not. It's not possible.
That's true.
Um,
It's
so this is like talking to an NPC. So
no.
it's just
Well,
impossible.
but think of it. We need a man or person who's unbelievably sharp in order to stop all the nuclear danger and all the dangers that I'm talking about.
I think something that um, that I think people can generally understand is that what happens with laws and regulations is that there's more and more of them every year, and unless there's a process to clean them up, eventually everything becomes
You're right.
illegal, and that actually it slows down the development of new technologies. I mean, if you take the sort of like I think there's room for some reform at the FDA
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
improving the speed with which we approve drugs that could help save lives and improve people's
Yeah.
lives.
I worked very hard on that.
You know,
We got that down
yeah,
to the lowest number ever, and we got therapeutics approved in the FDA that people can't even believe the speed. But I took them on. I don't think they like me too much, but I got things approved in the FDA at numbers that they wouldn't believe. And it's a very bureaucratic group. Actually, it's a fine group of people in many cases. I got to know a lot of them, but I was pushing them really hard for Regeneron, for so many different things that were really pretty amazing. But the FDA takes too long. It's 12 years to get a product approved. I got it down to 4, and I
yeah,
got some things done very quickly. But it's really something that is going to have to be worked on because it takes too long. Just takes too long.
yeah,
Getting back to the FDA for 1 second, I got something done called Right to Try. This is where you can go in and if you're terminally ill, you can use a space age, medicine or whatever it may be. We have the best doctors, the best labs in the world. We really do. And but people would go to other countries because you couldn't use the product, even if they thought it worked, because it's going through the FDA. I got it approved
yeah,
where you can
yeah,
you basically you look, nobody wanted, the doctors didn't want it because of the liability, the country didn't want it, our country, because they didn't want to get sued. These are people terminally ill. The insurance companies didn't want it, and the pharmaceutical companies, nobody wanted it. I got everybody into a room, and we came up with an agreement that you won't get sued. And also, they didn't want it on their record. If somebody's terminally ill and they die after taking a drug, they didn't want that on their record. So we set a separate list. If somebody was, so it wouldn't count as a negative.
yeah,
Okay. And as you know, we got it
yeah,
done. We have saved Right to Try. They've been trying to get this done for 58
yeah,
years. And it sounds simple, but it wasn't because I mean, the insurance companies, nobody wanted it, but we got it done.
sure,
Somebody signs, you sign a document that you're not going to sue the insurance companies, the country, you're not going to sue anybody. And we got it done. And we're saving tens of thousands of lives. Right to Try. The economy now is the big thing, and we can turn that economy up so fast, and people are going to be back again. We're going to get rid of
yeah.
inflation.
I think there's a lot of
Right.
opportunity. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
So
And I just
I
want to
think I
I want to
think
congratulate you. You've done an amazing job. You have definitely got a fertile mind.
actually I call myself, uh, historically a moderate Democrat, and but now I feel like we're really at a critical juncture for the country, and uh, I think a lot of people thought the Biden administration would be a moderate administration, but it's not, and obviously we're just going to see an even further left uh, administration with Kamala. That's my honest opinion. I mean, her dad is literally. I mean, she was brought up as an actual. Her dad is a Marxist economist. You can Google it. I mean, it's not a. We're not making this up. That's how she was brought up. So
I have to just end with this. We have great police. We have great law enforcement, but they're not allowed to do their job. They have to be able
Yeah,
to do their
yeah,
job without being
agreed.
destroyed.
well, absolutely, and it's obviously demoralizing if you're a police officer risking your life to arrest violent criminals who could kill you and do kill you sometimes, and then you arrest the violent criminal, and then the DA doesn't prosecute, and they just let the guy out.
Yeah.
Well, then, like, why should a police officer risk their life uh, to arrest a violent felon
Well, even worse,
if
Elon,
nothing's going to happen?
even worse, they prosecute the police officer. Guatemala, Honduras, El Salvador, some others. You couldn't get him back. And I said, really? Oh, you can't get him back? Because under Obama, he couldn't get him back. They'd fly him in, and they'd put planes on the runways in these countries so you couldn't land a plane. They'd bring him back. And the generals told me, sir, we can't bring them back. The countries won't accept MS-13 gang members. They won't accept them. And I said, really, how much do we pay these various countries in terms of economic aid, which is also somewhat ridiculous? And the answer was $750 million. I said, good. Tell them they're in default. they're delinquent. We're not paying them anymore because they won't accept
Yeah,
their.
it's
And you know what happened? They all called me,
yeah,
every one
yeah.
of them. They said, we would be honored to take them back, sir. We would be honored.
It's just that you want to have empathy for
Right.
people. Obviously, you want to have empathy for people. I totally agree with that. You want to have empathy, but you also have to have empathy for the victims of the criminals.
And we have to give our police officers the dignity and the respect that they deserve. And we have to let them do their job. They can do a great job, but we have to let them do their job. And if we don't do that, it's going to all disappear. There's never been a society like this where you're allowed to do anything you want and nothing happens. And I'm talking about violent crime. And
It's gotten to the point where people just don't even bother reporting crime in a lot of
that's
cities
right.
because they know nothing is going to happen. Um, that's what I hear anecdotally from people all the time. So it's just my values. I'm just saying to people out there, like the things I think are important for the future is like we've got to have safe cities, we've got to have secure borders, we've got to have sensible spending, and we've got to have deregulation, and
Right.
so we can have a prosperous future. And then we want to have some exciting, sort of moonshot projects that people can get fired up about. And that's the future I'm looking for. And I'm pro environment, but I'm not against. I'm not like I don't think we should vilify the oil and gas industry because they're keeping civilization going right now. And but I do think we want to move at a reasonable speed towards a sustainable energy economy. Those are my values, and I think um, and so I mean that's uh, why I'm supporting you for president.
Well, I
So
appreciate it. We're going to give incentive to companies to come into our country, not to leave our country. We're going to be giving tremendous incentives. We want companies to build here, not to build in other locations, because if
yeah.
we don't win, I just feel so sorry for everybody.